I gotta send you. Or you gotta come down before this garden like burns out because we're getting a ton of veggies.
No, I'd love to, man. We should, just get a bunch ready and like roast them or do some kebabs or
Absolutely.
fucking who knows, man. We could just do anything. We could do anything with vegetables.
Nikki made veggie tacos on Friday night, and they were, honest to goodness, like one of the best things I've ever eaten.
They sound amazing. Like,
Yeah.
what did she use for like inside the taco besides the veggies?
We had black beans, corn, zucchini, squash, tomato, peppers, jalapenos. I think that was it.
That
And
sounds
then
fantastic.
lime, squeeze a lime, some seasoning. It's unreal.
Unreal, man. Fucking
Unreal.
veggie tacos were unreal.
I love tacos. Like, they're like the greatest food ever made because you can put anything inside them. Anything can be a taco.
Yeah, just getting that crunch, whether it's hard shell or soft shell. It's just such a big morsel of just deliciousness.
It really is.
Especially with like hot sauces and shit on there, and like you're getting creative with like what you're gonna put on. And oh man, have you guys been to Bar Taco?
No, that's on my list. I keep forgetting about it though.
All right. Well, I've been there about 100 times, so we'll have to go.
All right.
All right.
Sounds
All
good.
right then.
I'm down. I'm down.
Okay.
I love a good restaurant. So, as if my portly frame didn't describe that for you. Hey everybody, welcome to Will and Drew's Gaming Retrospective. You're listening to episode 35 for the week of July 28th, 2019. I am your host, Drew, and I am joined by Executive Fit Will.
What's up, man?
How's it going, dude?
I'm well, man. I can't believe it's almost August.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I'm getting married in like 2 weeks.
Holy shit. How do I not know this? You just decided to like tell me this on air?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's not like a big deal.
Well, I mean,
it is, but it isn't. I
it's
don't
a
know.
life-changing, once-in-a-lifetime event, so I guess it's not a big deal.
I mean, to me, it's not really life-changing because I've been living with this girl for like 8 years and we've bought a house together. And so, like, to me, this is just a piece of paper and a ring,
Yeah, I can appreciate that, man.
So it's, I don't know. I have a whole,
Yeah, it's the next step.
I have a weird outlook on this whole thing.
Mm.
I think there's something wrong with me. Anyway, how are you?
I'm well, man. I am excited for today's episode. We have a lot to go over.
Yeah.
We've been kind of prolonging the inside review, and that has finally come into action here. So
Yep. I'm excited.
I'm looking forward to divulging.
Very excited to talk about that game. Very excited to break that down and kind of get into all the nuances of it and get your take on it. Before we dive into that, let's just get a little business out of the way. Thank you for downloading the show. Please be sure to subscribe in any of your favorite podcast applications. Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, anywhere you get your podcasts, we're there. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at WDGRPodcast. That's at WDGRPodcast. Will, if somebody would like to follow you, how can they do so?
Will_gear.
You can follow me at ScionStorm on social media. And of course, feel free to swing by our Discord room, say hello, stop by, have a bite to eat, cup of tea, maybe a beer or two, and chat with everybody about some cool games.
Mm.
So, Will, what have you been playing lately, man?
Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice.
I fired up my PlayStation last night. It was like around 9:30, 10 o'clock or so, and I'm like, oh, I have 4 friends online. And then I load it up, and I see you there, and I see Sekiro. I'm like, yes, Will's playing Sekiro.
My man.
Yeah,
man.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's just as hard as ever, man. I, as a lot of people know, I gave that game a brief hiatus, and for good reason. It's just incredibly brutal, and you just kind of need to step away sometimes. And I'm glad I did, but I'm glad I'm back. And I forgot how much I missed the game. I'm still stuck on a very challenging boss, but I'm almost there. A lot of these bosses require a lot of rhythm, and there's a cadence to kind of what you have to do with, with attacking and parrying and all that kind of stuff. So I did have to break out the strategy guide for the first time because it was just getting that tough. And I was really trying to avoid that for the first playthrough and break it out on the second time through. But, whatever. I needed some assistance, and I ended up using YouTube instead.
Yeah.
with the strat guide open with the phone over the strat guide. So
nice.
That was kind of redundant. But yeah, currently fighting him. It's, god damn, dude, is he hard. But the more persistent you are, the closer you get to beating him. And a lot of these bosses, they have different stages. It's not always just like one stage and you're done. This particular boss is 3 stages. So I'm assuming if you get past the second stage and you get to the third and you lose, my guess is they might make you start all over again. And if that's the case, I might put a pen in my eye. And then I'll be playing, one-eyed.
I hope your
hopefully that doesn't
depth
happen.
perception is good.
I hope so, man. But
one-eyed will.
Yeah, right. But yeah, that description and kind of review of what the game's been like for me lately does not sound that appetizing to probably most. But trust me, as hard as this game is, it will keep you coming back, and you will get persistent enough to where you want to, overcome whatever obstacles in your way. And sometimes you have to take a break, and sometimes that break needs to be a month.
Yep.
But when you get back to it, it feels great, and I'm just glad I'm playing again. And I kind of had to review all of the upgrades and everything that I unlocked, because I kind of forgot just what I was doing. And I know that's something that we're going to talk about on today's episode. It's one of Tom's questions, which is a very good one. But yeah, what about you, man? What are you playing?
Not much. I spent most of the week working on the audio for a short film that we were trying to get out for a contest, which the deadline is actually tomorrow, Monday, July 29th. So we did the filming a couple weeks ago on the hottest day of the year. Literally 110 degrees outside, and we're running around a forest fighting each other while somebody films. And then we got the video edited down, and it was just a matter of doing the Foley and the dialogue and the music and everything for that. So I spent literally every night this week working on that up until yesterday. Yesterday it finally got finished. So I really didn't get a ton of time to game, but I found a deal on Best Buy for the 25th anniversary of Flashback: The Quest for Identity, which is one of my favorite games from the 90s, and it was $10 for the PS4 version, and it was a no-brainer. And I bought it, and it came in Saturday, and I popped it in last night, and they did a really nice job with the presentation of the game. It's still very much a 16-bit version of the game, but they went back and did some remixes for some of the music, and they had some art, and they did add a rewind feature to the game, so that if you haven't gotten to a save point, you're not forced to start back at the beginning of the stage. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a welcome feature. That game can be brutally hard at sometimes, so it's a game that I have beaten before without any of those cheats, but it's nice to have the ability to just kind of sit down with it and really enjoy it without having to worry about throwing a controller across the screen.
Yeah.
But it's a really landmark game in my opinion, because it was one of the first games to kind of use rotoscoping and really intricate movement for characters. There's a lot of FMV kind of stuff in there too. This thing was released on all different platforms. The PC was probably the best one, and they had this whole interactive story that they told, and the game itself is just the controls are a little clunky, but it's a really good science fiction story. Really, I think worth checking out, especially at the price. $10 for a classic like that, I think is absolutely worth it.
I would say so, yeah. That sounds pretty intriguing.
So I was happy to get my hands on that, and I popped it in for a little while. That'll be the kind of thing where maybe I'll sit down once in a while and just play a level. And I don't have to worry about punching in a password or anything ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's about it.
Well, at least you got to play something.
Yeah, I kind of felt like I needed it. It was nice to unwind with it last night before bed for a little while.
Yeah.
So, but my goal is to get back to Spider-Man, finish that up, and then I really want to focus on, I think, Prey. I think I'm going to try and get that next. Because I'm dying to try out Nier Automata. I know that's going to be a long haul game. Maybe I'll do God of War at the same time, too.
I gotta say, I've been watching Damien Sikoro shares, right? No, it's Sikoro plays?
I don't know. He has a different one for every media platform he's on.
He does. But either way, I've been watching him on Twitch. Not often, but a little bit more often than before. And I gotta say, Spider-Man looks fun, man. I've been watching him play. He's been playing that and a couple other games, as far as I know. But it's a lot more fun than I expected, because I didn't really watch a lot of video, like when you kind of talked about it. And watching him play, it was quite extraordinary, like what you can do there. And it looks like a ton of fun, and you can really web onto anything. And I can see why you kind of want to go back to that.
It's a blast. It's genuinely one of the most fun games I've played in the past like 5 to 10 years. And it's on sale right now for $20 at Best Buy if you're up for a physical copy. So that's a good deal. Can't recommend it. It's worth every penny. That game is tremendous. It's just fun.
Yeah,
it's
it looks
just
so
fun,
good too.
You know?
Yeah, it looks fun, and graphically, I was really impressed with how Spider-Man actually looks, like his suit, and just kind of the fluidity of the game is definitely on point.
I don't think I've encountered any like graphical glitches either.
Yeah, it seems like they really polished that one.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like a AAA title, you know. So
indeed.
Let's take a look at the mailbag, shall we?
Yeah, we got quite a big bag today.
Yeah. Thank you to everybody who sent in a question. We also like to know what you guys are playing, and we got lots of responses there. So let's start with the what everybody's playing first, and then we'll go back to the questions. This one comes from YMMOC. I don't know what the hell that screen name is, but this dude, this is Patrick from the Retrospectives podcast. If you're looking for an in-depth review on some older games, check them out. They're pretty good podcast, cool dudes too. Patrick says, I've been playing Overwatch recently on the verge of them introducing Roll Queue. Previously, you could combine any number of heroes from any of the 3 classes, DPS, tank, healer. Now, soon, you'll be forced into playing 2 healers, 2 DPS, 2 tanks 100% of the time. Interesting. Overwatch is one of those games that like I always was kind of curious about, and then it got really popular, and then I was like, fuck this, I don't want to play a super popular game.
Right. That's my mentality too, man. Like as soon as I heard about like Overwatch League or whatever the hell it is, and just like as soon as I hear about something blowing up and like, a bunch of people are playing it, I often get skeptical.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, Fortnite, same thing,
Ugh.
Yeah,
it just sounds so kiddish,
Well, it is.
I mean, I don't know enough about it. See, that's the thing, is like I'm so prone to like avoiding something if it sounds kiddish. I don't even look at it, dude. Like I don't even investigate it. So I wouldn't even know if it's like an adult game or what.
Fortnite's one of those things that has just exploded into like pop culture.
Yeah, just like, I imagine like a bunch of like young kids in the mall just being like, oh, Fortnite, like, and when I hear that, I, again, want to put a pen in my eye. So I avoid things like that like the plague. I
think we're going to have to call this episode One-Eyed Will, because that's the second time you tried to kill yourself. Let me note that real quick.
With your typewriter.
My typewriter, my Corsair mechanical keyboard, sir. Jefferson James says, currently playing Fable 2 and Apex. I also got the urge to finally finish GTA 5, so I'll be continuing with that soon. That's going to lead into a question, which we're going to postpone for now. Fable 2 is one of those games that I just... any of the Fable games, I've tried them, and I just get burned out like 3 hours in.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I feel like I probably should like the Fable games, because it, I guess it's kind of on par with games like Skyrim. It's kind of an open world RPG kind of situation. But again, for me, a lot of it's art style and animations, and Fable 2 is right on par with like Gears of War. Like it just seems clunky and bulky and kiddish and too colorful. And, I'm not attracted to that. So that's why I kind of avoided those games.
I hope you're not calling Gears of War kiddish.
No,
Okay.
I will say that at least Gears is not kiddish. It's just everybody's playing as Ronnie Coleman, juiced up on steroids. So
Fair enough.
it's just like, oh, revive me. I can't. It just makes me want to laugh and turn it off.
Yeah, they're a little testosterone filled, but they're good games. So, GTA 5, I haven't even given the time of day yet either.
No, I remember Tom actually kind of, I wouldn't say forced, but he definitely convinced me into getting that game when it came out like years ago. And I think I played like maybe 10 minutes of it, and I was like, yep, not for me. Again, didn't really like the character setup, didn't really like the premise of being able to do kind of whatever. It just, I get bored with those games. We've talked about that before on previous episodes. I can't. There are certain open world games that I just get bored like in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I hear you. Let's see here. Puxor says he's been playing The Outer Wilds, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, and Slay the Spire. He's spoken about Outer Wilds and Slay the Spire previously, but Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 is one of those games that I didn't know I wanted until I started hearing about it. And I think it's just kind of like... just kind of a beat 'em up. I don't think there's anything crazy about it.
Yeah, I've heard of it, recently. I'm assuming it's kind of newer.
Yeah, it just came out.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard about it. I just don't know enough about it. Unfortunately, I still don't know anything about Outer Wilds or Slay the Spire. Pux's choices are quite intricate for me. Even though they're indie stuff, I just often don't know anything about the games. So I'd have to do some more research to kind of comment on what he is displaying there.
Yeah, I think it's worth taking a look into at least the Outer Wilds. Slay the Spire, I know, is definitely not for you. But Outer Wilds, I think, might have some value to you. I don't know if it's on a system you own, though. I'm not sure what. I think it's Microsoft.
Oh, okay.
Let's see here. Is it on the PS4? Yeah, you won't be able to play it.
Okay.
So, never mind. Let's see here. Joe Donut says, my fiance and I just started Wolfenstein Youngblood, and while we knew it was a co-op game, we assumed it would be linear, story-focused, and short. Instead, the game is grindy, open-world-like, with tons of small missions. It has more in common with a game like Destiny, Warframe, or The Division, but for 2 players. It's still pretty fun, and the story bits are hilarious, but we already commit hours every week to Destiny 2, and we're definitely not looking for a big investment.
I don't know enough about Wolfenstein. I really don't know much at all. I'm assuming it's kind of like a war. It's like a sort of spin-off on a war game, right?
Well, we have to talk about this phrase of yours that you keep saying. Is like, I don't really know much about this game. It's fucking Wolfenstein. Wolfenstein's been around longer than Doom, bro.
I'm aware, but believe it or not, man, I haven't played a single one of them. Not a single one.
The new ones are very good. I mean, they're first-person shooters. So, if that's not your bag, then it's not going to be this isn't going to make it or break it for you. But they're very good games. The newest ones that have been out past couple iterations have been very, very strong. Unfortunately, one of them made me like motion sick, so I really couldn't continue with it. I need to circle back to it and try it again, though. They're great games, but that kind of turned me off on the series a little bit, just because like I tried putting some time into it and I was just getting wicked headaches.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's not good.
My diet was kind of weird then. I was like doing like this really super low carb thing at the time that may have contributed.
I would say so. Good, pretty big factor there.
Yeah. So I'm definitely willing to give it another shot, but I just I've had so many other games on my plate that I just haven't made time for it. But they are good games. Definitely worth checking out. The Wolfenstein games have been pretty positively rated for the past few that have come out.
Well, I will say it's interesting that he's comparing this game to Destiny, Warframe, or The Division, which are grindy games. And the fact that it's for 2 players makes it kind of unique, because I can't really think of a lot of grindy games that are 2 players.
Yeah, I mean, this is not normal for the series. And I wasn't aware that the new one was like that, which actually leads into his question for the segment. Have you ever been completely blindsided by a game sequel?
You're asking?
Yeah.
Have I been blindsided by a game sequel? You mean in terms of it just kind of like the like what's happening with Wolfenstein, or like the announcement of a game sequel?
No, I mean, I think he's talking about like your expectations for a game being, completely wrong.
Oh, geez, I didn't even see that it was actually his question. I thought you were just spitballing.
No. It's actually part of his statement.
Sure. So with that being said, I'm trying to think here. Blindsided.
That's like a tough question to answer because
it is a tough question.
Most of the games that I've played have been, the sequels are like a variation on the previous one. There's not going to be too much difference, so you kind of know what you're getting into. Maybe it's not what you expected fully, but
I mean, like, it's a lot of these questions sometimes require a lot of thought, but I will say that if I had to think of something just kind of off the top of my head, it would probably be Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, for the same reason that a lot of people were blindsided by that game, because it wasn't the announcement, but it was the fact that you play as a different character in that game than who you expect to play as.
And was that something that was revealed, like, in the build-up to the game?
Absolutely not.
So you bought that game with the impression that you're playing a Solid Snake the entire time?
Correct. And so did everyone else.
Do you play the Solid Snake at all?
You do, but it's really not for long, like, at all. Like, not at all. It's almost like you're playing him for, like, the prologue of the game.
That's really disappointing.
Yeah, because I will say they did a really good job hiding that fact of you not playing a snake, really at all. But, that's a big subject with that game. I will say that it was definitely a shocking moment. I remember being in my bedroom at the age of like 16 or whatever, being like, what? Like, okay, like, I guess I'm playing as this dude for like a little bit, and then it turned out it was the rest of the game.
Wow.
So as much as I enjoyed that game, it was a little disappointing at first, and it took some time to get, used to it, but
yeah,
it was a decision, and it will never change.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess it is locked in history, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have an answer to Joe's question. I'm glad you had something, because like I'm trying to think. I've been trying to think of an answer since he typed it. And
yeah, because like, I mean, if you think about game sequels, most of the time they're relatively the same.
Mm-hmm.
The core mechanics are, improved and things like that, but overall, like, if you take a game like I don't know, let's say Crackdown, which I've never even played. I've seen gameplay of the first game and the second game, and I believe the third one just came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw Damien play that, and it kind of just looked the same.
Yeah.
So I know that's just kind of a weak comparison, because there might be some sequels that are very much like Wolfenstein Youngblood, but for you and I to think of one right now, it's seemingly difficult.
Yeah, I mean, without like going through, like I went through like some of my shelves while I was waiting for you to log in, and I really couldn't think of anything. Mario 1 to Mario 2 is such a drastic difference. So I guess that would be an example of a game that blindsided people. But like by the time I played that, it had already been out for a while. I already knew there was a difference. So
sure.
Let's go back up to the top of the list. Raffy Fatfingers asks, if you could cosplay as anything, what would it be?
Simple but good question. Have you given any thought to this one, Drew?
Doom guy.
Okay, wow, that's really respectable. I've never seen a Doom cosplay.
They're rare, but
they seem to be rare.
Every once in a while, I'll see one.
Maybe it's because most gamers are like not buff. They're not eating like Campbell's chunky soup like every night.
Yeah, I guess not.
And like rice and beans and just like hearty good food with protein and going to the gym 5 days a week, because that's what you would have to do to look like the Doom guy.
Yeah. Or
like, period.
Or you just like put on a bunch of foam armor that covers all your, inadequacies.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be some people that have like a reasonably good build. Like Damien, like, would be a great Doom guy.
Yeah.
He'd be great.
I think so.
But like, that's a great choice, man. I don't understand why more people don't do it. Like I said, a lot of gamers are not in the best shape, but most people are not in the best shape. However, it's still a badass cosplay. So yeah, great choice. I think for me, I would say I would say like the wolf from Sekiro. Even though I'm not, I don't look anything like him, and I don't have any swordplay skills. I would love to. I would love to cosplay that because his outfit is just so incredible. Like it's like this traditional ninja-esque kind of gear with this prosthetic arm, which is just amazing. There's actually a company called Gecko that's making like I believe a life-size like statue of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if I can find it, I'll post it in here. But yeah, it's just it's a really badass, like, he's a badass character, and he's got his hair like kind of tied back, like traditional Japanese like ninja kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
There's just everything about him is just badass, and he's kind of like pale too, which makes him kind of like scary. So yeah, I would say him. If I had to think of something kind of relevant to now, it would be him, and relatively easy to pull off. I mean, doing the prosthetic arm would be challenging, but I'd be up for that challenge. The rest would just be, getting creative with the outfit.
I still have to play this game.
Oh, yeah, you must, dude. I'm telling you, man. For me, it's still going to be Game of the Year.
Yeah. We should do like a Game of the Year awards. Even though all my choices are going to be like from 3 years ago.
That's fine, man.
Let's see here. Patrick also asked from before. Let's see here. My question is, which system in the abstract do you think is better? Is it better to have a complete freedom to combine these heroes together in interesting ways, or does a more restrictive system force players to innovate and be creative with the more limited tools at their disposal? So this is kind of tied into his prior question, which I totally neglected. So I apologize for that, or his statement about Overwatch. This is the tricky part when you try and split the questions and what people are playing.
Yeah, I'm just kind of analyzing the question again.
Yeah. So he says, I've been playing Overwatch recently on the verge of introducing the role queue. You could have any number of heroes from 3 classes. Now they're forcing you 2 healers, 2 DPS, 2 tanks. So which system in the abstract is better? Is it better to have complete freedom to combine these heroes together in interesting ways, or does a more restrictive system force players to innovate and be creative with the more limited tools? I think why not both? I think a game like Overwatch should give players the option when you're joining a server, join a server where it's restricted, or join a server where it's free to do whatever. I think in competitive play, I think it's good to have restrictions on the classes and how many there are so that people are forced to diversify and they can't spam certain classes. But if you're just fucking around in like free play, like why not let anybody use whatever they want?
Sure. Again, kind of a difficult question for me because I'm really not initiated into what's going on here with these games. But I do understand the question a little bit better, and I think that I don't know. I kind of like the freedom. Like I would say, like it would be better to have complete freedom to combine the heroes, together in interesting ways. Like I would say that particular part of the question, I would go with that part of it as the answer. Because I wouldn't want to feel restricted to having like the 2 healers and the 2 DPS and 2 tanks 100% of the time. Not to keep paraphrasing here, but that's the best way that I can answer that question.
Have you, or maybe you can kind of shed a little bit of light on this, in any of the Battlefield games, have there ever been any kind of like class systems?
Oh yeah, 100%. So you have, let's see if I can remember this: engineer, support, assault, and recon. So you have those 4. Recon is your sniper. Engineer is your engineer. Then you have assault, which is basically a medic or an assault class. I mean, some of them are kind of self-explanatory.
Right.
And then support is basically like not med packs. It's ammo, and like usually like you're toting around like some big gun, like a BFG or like a machine gun or something of that nature. So, without going off about Battlefield, to me, a lot of it was assault and engineer, especially in like the Bad Company 2 days, because they were really really just like well-rounded classes, and you could really utilize them to your favor in most situations. But yeah, you had people that were very specific on other ones. So I liked the freedom of being able to choose whichever class I wanted depending on the situation, and you could change on the fly. So if you died, you can change to engineer. If like, let's say there's a tank that you just like the team can't fucking get rid of, a lot of us would switch to engineer and we'd go and throw like mines down around it. Or we would like switch to like an RPG and just smoke this fucking thing. And then when you're done, you go back to assault and you start, just going to town and dropping med packs and just doing your thing.
Cool. Kind of neat.
So hopefully that kind of answers that in a I don't know, a way that's more relevant to me.
I think it does.
Hopefully, yeah.
Let's see here. Jefferson James asks, I have easily put 100 plus hours into GTA 5 and never finished. I'm sorry. Have you ever put 50 plus hours into a game just to walk away from it after getting burnt out? If when you go back to finish it, do you pick up where you left off or start over? I've easily put 100 plus hours into GTA 5, never finished. I've also started over at least 3 times due to how long it has been since I last played. Is it better to just pick up where you last left it and stumble through the story because you forgot what you were doing, or start over only to sink a large amount of time doing things you have already done? It seems the latter, which leads to 100 plus hours into a game only never to finish.
This is a really, really good couple questions here. Technically, there's about 3 questions. I would say that yes, I've definitely put 50 plus hours into a game and walked away after getting burned out. No doubt about it. Probably Skyrim. If I had to think of one now. If and or when you go back to finish it, do you pick up where you left off or start over? This is one of the ultimate questions that I think a lot of us, often think about. And I think it's a combination of both. Sometimes there are games that you can pick up where you left off and it's no problem. But most of the time for me, I would say I would have to start over because I hate going into a game after putting it down for so long and not knowing like what I was doing. Because it takes forever to like get reacquainted, depending on the game. And I would say, even though it depends on the game, most games nowadays are kind of complex. So to kind of throw yourself back in and try and figure out what quests you're doing and all that jazz, it sometimes gets overwhelming and you just want to start with a clean slate.
Yeah, I think the asterisk for this really is, depending on the game. A game like Horizon, I have about, I think, 70 something hours in on that game, and I'll go months without playing it, and I'll just pick it back up again and start up again. And the map system on that and the quest system is set up in a way where you can kind of just pick up where you left off. It'll give you the information you need. It'll give you a marker on the map. You go to it, and then you just do your thing, and it's not a big deal. So, that game I'll probably never restart. I will play that when I can or whenever I have the urge, and I'll just pick up where I left off. But there are RPGs like Chrono Trigger. I've started over about 5-6 times, and I still have never beaten it. Because I'll go months or even years without playing it, and I have no idea what's going on when I get back into it. So I'll start it from scratch, try again, and then the same shit will happen.
Yeah, it's just some games, it kind of makes you question, is the game too long at that point, or is it just me being lazy and not having any fucking commitment? And I think sometimes it's a combination of both, and I think that we could probably all agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, my goal this year has been to commit to games a little bit more than I have in the past, and while it hasn't been perfect, I think I've succeeded for the most part.
Yeah. So. In regards to, Tom's kind of third question here about, is it better to just pick up where you last left it and stumble through the story because you forgot what you were doing, or start over to only sink a large amount of time? I mean, obviously this stems back to the kind of second part of the question, but it goes a little bit more in depth. I think it's still kind of the same answer, man. Like, I think that it still depends. A game that's very story driven probably is going to require you to start over, unless you're capable of, kind of thinking back to what you might have forgotten about the story and kind of rehashing everything in your mind, or going back and doing something to kind of, stimulate it again. But a lot of times it takes, the same amount of work as it does to start over. Right. So that's where you have to kind of draw the line somewhere and say, right, what am I doing? I'm going to just fucking start over and put these hours back in and just get this done, or do I stumble through? And I think that's what makes this this question so good, is it's something that I think we're still dealing with to this day.
I agree. Puxor asks, there's a low-res game jam coming up, which has me thinking about some of the coolest graphically postmodern games out there. What's the coolest game you've played with a retro aesthetic that wasn't actually possible to build when that aesthetic was mainstream? My biggest example is Return of the Obra Dinn, but other examples are the cool neon pixelation of Darwinia, or getting super technical and pointing out that Dark Void Zero has more sprite sounds than its target console could support. Retro City Rampage, of course, doesn't count since it was ported to DOS, which I was not aware of. There are some really great retro modern games that have come around that just would not have been able to exist, I think 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Anything come to your mind?
Not really. I'm sitting here thinking, if I played a game with a retro aesthetic,
have you ever?
It wasn't actually possible to build when the aesthetic was mainstream. Yeah, it's
Have you ever?
I don't know, man.
Have you ever played Hyper Light Drifter?
No, but I'm aware of it, and I've had a couple people tell me to play that game.
I think that that's a prime example of a game that looks retro, but could never have been done in a on a even a Super Nintendo. It's just the retro look is spot on, but there's a lot more visually and mechanically going on that I think that system would have been able to handle.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could take Octopath Traveler, might be one for the Switch. I still adore that game, and I've actually been thinking about getting back to it because the Switch is continually docked on my fucking desk, so I have to look at it every day. And every day I look at it, I think about the games I'm not playing, and Octopath is one of them. And that game, for anybody listening, please check it out. It's basically like a, like a newer take on like a classic RPG.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it has that retro look, I would say that maybe that would be my pick as a game that has that look, but wouldn't have been possible on, Super Nintendo, Genesis, or NES, or any of those old school systems. It's too fluid. It's basically like taking, Chrono Trigger and redoing it. That's what Octopath is like. It's retro, but it's not. It's relevant. It plays better. And my God, is the soundtrack good.
When I do inevitably get my Switch, I need you to remind me to buy that game.
Yes, I certainly will.
Because that's something that was on my radar when it came out, and I just didn't have the system.
Well, it's funny, without going off on like a Switch tangent, that was one of the main reasons I bought that fucking thing, is not only just for Bayonetta 2, but Octopath, just everybody was talking about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this game? And I looked into it, and the sound, I fell in love with the soundtrack. I fell in love with the art style and the way that this game looked, and that was it for me. And I don't regret it, man. I can't wait to get back into that game and just truly sink my teeth in.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to hearing you talk about it too.
Yeah.
Puxar threw out another question. What's the most pointlessly expensive console you can think of? For me, growing up as the 3DO, in college the PS3, and now you can play Cuphead in a car. I don't think a Tesla is a console, first of all, but the question is a good one. There are some extremely expensive consoles that have come out over the years. The 3DO is a good example. The PlayStation 3 cost way too much fucking money when it came out. And, I'm thinking like Neo Geo.
Yeah, that's exactly where my mind was at, man. It was definitely the Neo Geo, and we're talking about the home console here.
Yeah. How much did they want for that thing? It was absurd. It was like $1,000, wasn't it?
I think it was pretty close to that, man. I want to say it was at least like $7,000.
Wow.
But I remember, I think that might be still regarded as like the most expensive console that's ever been released, or certainly one of them.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
And I know it was really expensive because, like, didn't they say that it was essentially like an arcade perfect, like, home console?
Yes. Let's see here. I'm trying to see if I can find, like, what the original cost was when it was released. $650 in the US.
Yep. All right. So if that was a Metacritic madness, I probably would have won that round.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how that...
Just saying.
Well,
just saying. I'm clearly salty over here.
You better get your wins while you can, boy.
Yeah, I know, right?
Saikoro asks, where do you feel that narratives in gaming stand today?
I think they're pretty good. I mean, if you're talking about just like the narratives in the story, like, dialogue and things like that, I think it's definitely really good. I mean, it's come a long way. I don't think that you're talking in terms of like a game being narrated. I think that this is just, coming down to what is the dialogue like, whether it's text-based or spoken. I would say that Damien would probably agree that The Witcher 3 has a great narrative. I mean, there's just an enormous amount of dialogue in that game, and I think in terms of narrative being story-based, like how is the story narrative? Still on par with that, man. I think that most games nowadays have great stories, and they're executed well through the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, right now I feel that the video game industry as a whole is in a really good place as far as telling stories for games. They do need to be careful that they don't kind of fall into the same traps of like Hollywood, where they're kind of rehashing the same thing over and over and over again. But I mean, there's some really cool stuff happening right now, and some really great stories. I know one of his go-tos is BioShock Infinite. I think Horizon is an amazing story. It sounds like Sekiro's got a pretty good story. I haven't played it, so I can't vouch for it. But
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to name drop that one.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is it's really difficult for me to compare the stories of games today to the stories of games of yesterday. Like I would say like Nintendo, Super Nintendo era, because aside from RPGs, most games were about high scores. Like the storylines were paper thin. It was just a premise and a way to identify a character, and just to kind of get you playing. There wasn't a lot to it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think, we do have to be careful, or game developers have to be careful not to fall in line or kind of fall into that Hollywood trap, like you said, in terms of like, movies need to be enjoyable, and so do games. And when we lose the gameplay element, in terms of like how well is the gameplay itself, that's where I think things start getting dangerous, and the narrative takes over, and you end up getting a game where you're essentially playing like a game movie, is kind of what I call it. And that's been going on for years, but I think that it's a direction that games could be headed in, which scares me a little bit, because again, it's important for a game to be fun, and it's important for the gameplay itself, in terms of mechanics and stuff, to be fun and fluid. And that's where I feel like there are some games that are straying away from that, which concerns me a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid concern. So, thank you to everybody who sent in questions. We had some great questions this week. As always, you can shoot us an email at WDGRPodcast@gmail.com, or just jump in the Discord room and slide on over to the mailbag and leave a question and let us know what you're playing, and we can discuss it on the air. Thank you to everybody who sent in.
Please do.
So before we get into the inside review, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about some news that came out of QuakeCon this week. They kind of slid out Doom 1, 2, and 3 on the Nintendo Switch, as well as I believe it's the Xbox and the PlayStation 4, just out of nowhere. Like, oh, here you go. Here's the game again. And did you know about this? Like, did you have any idea that it was coming out on the Switch? Any of those?
I think I knew, I don't know, almost like vicariously, like through like just Twitch and Twitter and just like random social media. Like I've been seeing like a lot of like attention on Doom, and sort of subconsciously, without even like really reading into it, I kind of just was able to see that there was something going on. And I think once you kind of mentioned it in Trello as one of our topics, I was like, you know what, I kind of knew about this. And all I can say is I'm glad that Doom is receiving so much praise and so much attention, because this is a game series that I thought was going to die years ago, and it's only getting stronger.
Yeah, the 2016 version of Doom, I think, really resonated with people, and it kind of lit some fire back under the older games as well, too. But, I mean, it's always been a passionate following. I'm very excited about the idea of I'm excited about the idea of buying these games again. When I do end up getting my Switch, which will be sometime in August, I'm hoping, once they release the new model, I will definitely buy Doom 1, Doom 2, and Doom 3 again. And these are the ones with the expansions. So Doom 1 has the fourth episode, which I don't remember if that came with the Xbox 360 version or not. Doom 2 has the master levels, and Doom 3 has the expansion for that too, which I unfortunately never played. But I'm super eager to circle back to those games and play them again. However, it's been a bit of a rocky launch. There's been a couple issues.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so apparently there was some sort of a DRM that was left in the game that if you were not connected to the internet and you weren't logged into a Bethesda account, you wouldn't be able to play the game. And
that doesn't surprise me that much, though.
Well, my understanding is it was like they went out and said it was a glitch. It was meant to be for people who are members of the Slayers Club, so they can get like bonus something or others, which is it's like a Doom themed like game club of some sort. So I guess the idea was you sign in with your Slayers Club ID, and then you get like perks and wallpapers and shit. I don't even know. They're fixing it allegedly. And then the other issue was there was a couple people, as I mentioned before, these games have already been released on the 360. One guy went in to download his copies of the 360 versions of Doom 1 and 2, and they were no longer there. Bethesda pulled them from the store and then reissued the Xbox One versions of the game, essentially forcing somebody to download it again and pay for it again. Now, that supposedly has been fixed, but still, like, it's a little underhanded and kind of shady that that's something that could actually happen.
Yeah, that does concern me. Like I said, I'm not surprised by the DRM thing, but the concern I have is, anytime I hear about something not being there anymore and having to like either pay or re-download again is definitely something that, again, is concerning. Unless it's like an actual glitch or something like that, that's one thing. But if there's, if you're saying there's a case where the guy had to buy it twice, is that correct?
Well, that was the implication, that he would have to buy it twice. And then I guess there was enough outrage for it, and Bethesda flipped whatever switch they had flipped, and the games were relisted back on the marketplace to download if you've already bought them. They're claiming that was an error as well too, but I mean, it's entirely possible that they're just saying that, and that's kind of the concern. And it's always like, it kind of just brings up all these concerns that I've always had about digital media, because no matter how many times you buy something, all it takes is somebody just flipping a switch, and then that item is no longer yours.
Yep. And, that's the concern that I think some people have with services like PlayStation Plus and, any kind of service that allows you to download free games, and then they're still under the contingency that you have to be part of a particular program to play them.
Well, I mean, in that case, I think at least, they're telling you that up front, so you're aware of the situation. But let's say, yes. So you have a copy of Sekiro digital, correct?
Yes, I do.
And that cost you $60.
Yep.
And you bought that through the PlayStation Store.
Uh-huh.
Now, when you load up your PlayStation 5 years from now, you expect that game to be still something that you can download, correct?
Oh, for sure.
What happens if you can't?
I would definitely be like really upset.
And that's where I'm at with that argument.
Yeah.
Free games are one thing, right? But if you're spending a significant amount of money on something digitally, you expect to have access to it for the end of time.
Yeah. And, it's situations like that, which again are kind of once in a blue moon. However, it does kind of harken back to how you get those old school dudes or whatever. They're just like, no, man, I buy everything cash and physical. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're just like, dude, come on, get with the times. And then when something like that happens, you start thinking about what they said. And you're like, you know what? I kind of respect that now, because even though it doesn't happen often, when it does happen, those guys are playing a game and you're not at the end of the day.
Well, I'm the physical guy. I'll use my credit card, but I'm the physical guy. All right, so now let's get down to brass tacks. What everybody's been waiting for like a month and a half.
Yes.
Inside.
Why is this game Inside? Why? What is your review?
I liked it until the end.
Now this has me concerned and intrigued.
I felt that this was a tremendous game up until the last 30 minutes. And I think it went off the rails and it got ridiculous.
Okay.
And I think this is a good point to point out to our listeners that we are entering spoiler territory. So if this is a game that you have not played and you intend to, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. So why? I think that's the major question here is why.
I felt like the final form of your character was insulting. You're running away from all these various things throughout the entire thing, and then finally you make your way into like this tank of water, and there's this big brain thing, I guess, in the water that all these scientists are watching, and then you become part of it, and then a part of it like breaks off, and you have like all these legs and arms like coming out of you, and you're essentially like the Kool-Aid Man smashing through things with like 14 legs. And you're just running around, and it just looks ridiculous. You're like this blob of flesh and goo, literally just busting through walls. And like I just couldn't help but laugh, like at the absurdity of that, because everything that happened up to this point with my character felt very real.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just kind of like fucked it up by turning me into like the 14-legged Kool-Aid Man.
Well, look, you're right about the Kool-Aid, like, breaking in fucking doors and shit, because isn't that what he did?
Yeah.
Like, if we go back to, like, the 80s and 90s when he was busting through shit in the commercials, like, with the ooh, yeah, and all that, what was he breaking through?
Brick walls.
It wasn't laboratories.
No, it was, like, little kids' rooms.
So that's somewhat frightening in today's times.
Yeah. But seriously, I don't know, man, like,
so that was the tipping point, huh?
Yeah, I was on board for this whole game until that happened.
So do you have a consensus on what this game is about? Like your take?
I mean, I'm really bad with like finding metaphorical stuff in games.
When there's no narrative.
Especially when there's no narrative. But I mean, to me, you have this kid that's running away from what seemed like alien invaders. Like, I'm thinking like Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of shit, right?
Okay.
And, he's running away from stuff, and, they turn like humans into like zombie slaves. And the ones that aren't zombie slaves are like working for them. And, they're probably, aliens as well too. And this kid can take control over the zombie slaves and make them do stuff and kind of work his way through the thing. And then he finally gets to this spot where there's like all these scientists, and maybe the scientists aren't aliens. Maybe they're humans that are like studying the aliens. I don't really know. But yeah, that's what I got.
I think this game does require some, how do I word this? Some passion or desire or curiosity on like what human evolution is going to be like and what it's like now, I guess. Like it's kind of hard for me to phrase this, but I feel like a lot of this, a good portion of this game is kind of a study on, I think, what is happening to human or mankind now and what could happen in the future with, crazy technologies. And it kind of, it kind of makes you think of, what's happening in these like Area 51 kind of places, right? And I think that this game really is what seems to be a boy who kind of just wrong place, wrong time, fell into this weird spot in the woods, maybe started trying to figure out where the hell he was. Obviously saw some like men like, kidnapping like other people, other kids or whatever. You've got these like zombie pig things.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the zombie slaves that you encounter later in the game where it's just like more people like you that obviously have been captured or got lost as well. And they began to do these mind control techniques and try and see what they can do to control people. I think this is what this game is about. It's about you're witnessing a very secret organization trying to control people. And once you start realizing that, obviously that's where the game gets really intense and really scary, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, man, like I'm part of like an experiment, a deep, deep, dark experiment. And I think Pucks had mentioned Akira at one point, didn't he?
Yes, yeah, we I think like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, when I announced that I had finished the game, he had made a reference to Akira, which, I mean, I can definitely see the comparison. It's been a long time since I've seen Akira, but I do remember, that whole ending pretty vividly, and I guess it's kind of along the same lines.
Yeah, it's similar.
Yeah.
But I think to kind of touch on what the tipping point was for you, I have to say that was the opposite for me. I think when you get to the hive is what a lot of people call it, that sort of brainish thing in the water that you eventually become a part of. When you kind of break out, I felt like it was very liberating because like you finally get to this point where you can become this blob, this animalistic blob of just frustration and just this morbid, horrible, diseased fucking thing that's just obviously a bunch of these people that they've somehow put together. And I think that either this hive was like a hive mind. There's a lot of theories that it was like sort of a mind that was controlling everybody in the game.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of like really interesting theories, but the way that I saw it was something similar to that, but like breaking out of that glass was incredibly satisfying. And as ridiculous as it was to be controlling this crazy fucking thing, I think for me, it won me over because just the sound design alone was so state of the art. And so to me, revolutionary because you could hear like, it just sounded like this collapse of a cafeteria, which it kind of was. Like you're kind of barging through like some sort of cafeteria like zone or like a work zone where people can sit down and shit.
Tables and chairs everywhere.
And I think what was really cool is, getting to that point where you're looking through the glass at the hive, but you can't really see the hive yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you become a part of it, I thought that was really clever. And clearly, like when you're on the loose as this hive mind, this giant blob, they start to realize like, holy shit, what have we done? And I think that's the takeaway that was big for me is like they were all just like, oh my fucking god, basically, how do we control this thing? It's loose.
Right.
They never planned for it, and I think that's where it gets really, really crazy. And that was my favorite part of the game is just the craziness of like, what have we done? And I think that was the tagline of the end of the game. It's like, let's try and trap this fucking thing. Obviously, they trap you and you escape because you're pulling out the blocks or whatever in that tank. And you eventually make it out, or what seems to be out, and you're in like this weird wasteland. And then all of a sudden you're like soaking up what appears to be sun or moon rays on this sort of shore of like this, again, wasteland.
Right.
And the game just kind of ends. And then you start thinking like, holy fuck, dude, like what was that,
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was like it was a very giddy moment. I was just like, oh man, like I remember the first time I played that game, I was like, what a fucking game, dude. I got to tell everybody about this. This game's just nuts. And I think the nuts aspect is really what sold me on it, man. Like I'm really into weird shit.
Yeah.
And, that game is a lot of weird shit. And it's really dark and it's really quite evil at times. And for me, it was the premise and the sound is what won me in that game.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was on board with everything you said up until, like, I think the last, 20 minutes of the game. I liked the darkness of it. I liked the evilness of it and how you were kind of running away from, trying to get free from all these different things. You had that creature that was in the water that was constantly chasing you, creating, like, this crazy tension. And, I liked how you kind of, like, absorbed her powers or his powers. I always thought it was a her because of the hair length. But, yeah, man, like I just couldn't get past that ending. You bust out of this wall, you go rolling down a hill with your 18 legs, and then you collapse on the beach and you just deflate.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could look at it that way. Like it's very easy to look at it that way, but I think it depends on like your curiosity levels, perhaps on what's going on in the game and your curiosity with what human experimentation could be like at like an extreme level. And I think depending on where you stand with that, like mentally, might affect how you perceive that blob. And I think that's the best way to kind of describe it because it's definitely fucking ridiculous. Like, you're breaking through these glass walls and it's incredibly satisfying because like you're not getting hurt. No one's stopping you. There's no more dogs. Actually, I think there are some dogs like towards the end.
Yeah, there are.
And
don't you absorb them or something?
I think you can, like, I don't know, but like there was just some moments, like I remember that moment where you kind of roll out of like a laboratory and you fall on like one of the guys, like you take the guy with you and you splatter him on the ground. Then you've got that other dude in the lab coat that's like trying to open the door, but he won't open it unless you're standing like far away from him.
Yep, I remember that.
It was just shit like that, like those little details just really made it a 10 out of 10 for me. And I think watching some reviews on that game, one guy said, this is like experiencing somebody's nightmare. And that was a really good way of describing this game because it's very hard to talk about.
I think if the character at the end was some sort of a different type of creature, I think it might have resonated with me a little bit better. You know, instead of becoming like this mess of limbs and arms and fat, like if you became a monster of like, I don't know, like a fucking like Cloverfield monster or some shit, you know, like maybe there'd be like a part where the scientists capture you, they strap you down, and then they like inject you with some kind of a serum, and the serum goes awry and you start smashing everything. I don't know, like just something different I think would have maybe resonated with me more. And,
sure.
And maybe on the surface that's a little bit too obvious. And you know, like I said before, I don't really do well with like finding the metaphors and things. So like maybe by making it that obvious, it would have kind of taken away from the game.
I think with that being said, I think sometimes, or perhaps with this game, it takes more than one playthrough. Because I will say, I feel like I enjoyed it perhaps more the second time through. Because I was paying more attention to everything that was going on in the background, like real close attention. Played with a headset again. I did do it the first time. But because I think I knew that we were doing kind of a co-op playthrough and like a review on the game, it made me pay attention more. And I think that helped me absorb the story and, you know, have my own perspective, you know, making my perspective a little bit more clear this time around. But you got to admit, man, the fact that they can make a game where you just run right with no narrative is pretty fucking impressive.
Yeah.
And it still tells quite a dark story.
I mean, you know, ending aside, for me, the game was tremendous. You know, I thought it was the perfect balance between being challenging and just being, you know, driving, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You know, you come into there's some puzzles that you'd walk into an area and I would just look at it and be like, oh, I need to do X, Y, and Z. And then I would do it and that would be it. And I would move on to the next thing. And then there were a couple of them where I really had to go back and like analyze it and fail multiple times before I either A, got it on my own, or B, pulled up a walkthrough, which I did consult on 2 or 3 spots. Just so I can kind of move on with the game. I really didn't want to like stress out about it, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's some pretty mind-bending stuff, and I'm going to just mention one part. It's very brief. The shockwave segment, and I spoke to you about this, I think, over Discord when I was playing. I didn't realize that there was this one part where you have to kind of jump onto a ladder at the same time that this pendulum is coming around.
Yep.
And obviously, like, when you walk up to it, you're like, all right, I see what's going on here. I got to time it where the pendulum comes around just right, and you're having to listen to, like, the shock waves, because anytime you get blasted by one of these things, you're smithereens.
Which was fucking awesome, I might add.
It was awesome. I mean, talk about sound design being at like an all-time high. I mean, it was just incredible sounds that you just don't hear it anywhere else. It was so unique. But that particular section, there was a lever that you could stop the pendulum, and then you could start it again. And I didn't realize that you have to start it and stop it, or no, excuse me, you have to start it at like a certain like place. Like you have to place the pendulum and stop it, and then you have to time the shockwave to where you're going to start it again. So then that way, like, you can kind of jump at the same time as the pendulum coming up and still have enough time to not get hit by the next shockwave. So it basically involved having to listen to the pattern of the shockwave as well as the placement of the pendulum and then the start of the pendulum. And when you factor in those 3, you're able to actually time it, you know, normally. But if you just let that, or time it perfectly, but if you just let the pendulum go and you try and go for it, you're going to get shockwaved, and it's going to drive you nuts because you're thinking, how the fuck do I change this?
Right. and then the segment immediately after that where you're moving another pendulum and you're trying to hide underneath the shadow of it, you know, or if the light touches you, you get zapped by the taser.
Yes.
It's what that those two parts lead directly into each other. That was something that I really had to go through multiple times before I figured it out. Like I could see what was happening, but I thought I could make, put it up halfway and then just dash my way to the rest, get through the end, and that was not the case. So
yeah, and it'll drive you nuts, and
Yeah.
that's why sometimes you have to look into those strategies, and you find it to be kind of humbling, because when you find a strategy, if it's being narrated by like a streamer or YouTuber, sometimes they're struggling for a while. Or they'll say, you know what, man, like this is how you do it, but it took me like an hour to figure it out. So,
I went with IGN actually, because they have a text walkthrough and then they pair it with videos. And the videos, at least in this case, didn't have any kind of dialogue or whatsoever. It was just gameplay.
yeah.
So I was able to just get to it, find what I needed, and get out. And without having, hey guys, welcome to my channel, smash that subscribe button,
Oh my God, if that was not an accurate description on most on most fucking channels, I don't know what was, man.
So, yeah, anyway.
Smash that subscribe button. And don't forget to give me a like.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. I mean, granted that has come to a much better place now, but I remember when YouTube was really kicking off, it was just fucking loaded with people like doing that shit.
Yeah, it's something else. YouTube is a special place, and I don't know if it's a place for me, but anyway. Yeah. I'm trying to think about
So
it.
do you recommend that people play this game?
I do. Despite my misgivings with it, I think there's enough good there to warrant a playthrough, and I think that the way you explain some of this stuff does shed some light into some of the issues that I had with it. I still think that the ending could have been handled better, but now we're getting into the games as art territory, and who's to say what's good art, I suppose. But I think the gameplay is excellent. I think the sound is excellent. The music is excellent. The game is fun. It's intuitive. It controls well. It's responsive. It's challenging, but not brutal. And it's a short enough game, and it's been available free on multiple platforms. So almost everybody should have it in some form or fashion by now. If you haven't played it, I definitely recommend it. But just, I think, go into it with that asterisk that, maybe the ending might not be for you.
Fair point. And play with headphones. That would be my only suggestion.
That, I will say that I kind of missed the boat on that, because most of the time I was playing the game using my television speakers while an air conditioner was blasting, right next to the TV. So it was very difficult for me to hear a lot of it. My surround sound system hadn't been working properly. I had to swap HDMI cables. So I was able to get that fixed for the last, maybe 2 hours of the game. And it would definitely improve the experience. I don't play with headphones, so it wasn't really an option for me. But I mean, good stuff. I think it's definitely an important game. I think it has value. I think it's worth your time. It's not a tremendously long game, so it's the kind of thing where if you really just want to hammer out a game in a weekend, you could do so. I think maybe this is about 10 hours total.
Yep.
And then
it was a little longer than we expected.
It was, but it was fine though. I thought I was closer to the end than I was at 1 or 2 points, but as the game progressed, I didn't find myself the only time I actually found myself wishing it was over was at the end. I was like, okay, I'm done. But I kind of felt like, okay, this is the peak of it now, so I just stuck with it and got through it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that games like that, even Limbo, kind of had a similar effect where you get to this point where you just kind of want to be done.
Yeah,
and it's not that the game is horrible by any means. I mean, obviously Inside was better, but it's just sometimes you just kind of want to wrap it up.
Yeah,
and I had some of those feelings as well, even with Inside. And Inside is one of my favorite games ever, and I still had that feeling at times. I was like, all right, all right, please let this just be the final stage. I'm done with the puzzles. I just want to kind of let's get to the meat and potatoes here, And you just can't help but feel that way sometimes.
I agree. I think it's a good way to put it. So,
but yeah, excellent game. Please play it at some point in your life. It's not urgent, but play it.
Yeah. Any ideas what you might want to do for the next playthrough?
I've got a few in mind. I would be interested in. Oh man, I don't know if I want to venture back down that road again, but Bastion and Transistor are great games. I finished Transistor, and that game is incredible. Bastion is really good. I did get a little bit bored with it at times, but I do want to finish it because both those games are incredibly unique. And Supergiant Games seems to make just absolute gems. So those are good. Child of Light, for sure. I don't know how long that is. It might be a little bit long.
It's not as long as you might expect for an RPG of that type.
Okay.
I got very close to finishing that, but I never finished it. So I would have no objection to circling back. That's a fun game. Really good soundtrack.
Yeah, I remember buying that game, I think because of that. The soundtrack and the gameplay just won me over, man. What a beautiful looking game.
It is so gorgeous and unique. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm kind of excited, man. We should after the show we should kind of chat about a possible list here.
I'm tempted to try to find something that neither of us have played either, or as well, to kind of get like a fresh insight into something, because it's easy to pick something that either I've played or you've played. We can kind of sell it on each other, but to pick something that neither of us has played might be a little bit fun.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
So, but we'll talk about that offline, and maybe toss it out to the group as well, get some input from everybody, and see what people think.
For sure.
So, did you have anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap everything up tonight?
Yeah, for those that are playing Sekiro, stay patient and keep blocking. And try to play most of your games with headphones. I'm finding it to be very enjoyable these days.
That's a good one. It's a good one. What headphones would you recommend?
There's so many, man. I gotta say a lot of them are crap. It's really hard to find a good one that you can just kind of buy like at a local store. But I will say that I do enjoy the PS4 headset I have. It's by Turtle Beach. I believe it's the Stealth 500. It's wireless, and it works great. I don't have to charge it that much. The sound is great.
How does how does that connect to your system if it's wireless? Like, is it USB or?
Yeah, there's a USB little like stick thing. It basically resembles like a what do you call it? Like a flash drive, like one of those little thumb drives. So you just plug that into one of the USB ports on the front of your PS4, and you're good to go. You turn on the headset, and it is legit wireless, chat and everything. And I know when wireless headsets first started coming out, there was always like some kind of wire involved somewhere.
Yeah.
But this really isn't, man. It works great. It's lightweight and comfortable. It was actually Joe who recommended it to me like some time ago, and it hasn't let me down. The one that I had before that was really good too. It was the Sony Gold wireless headset for $99. That one's been out for years. They have a new version of it, and that one was very good as well. So yeah, I a lot of people like to frown on wireless shit, but to be honest with you, man, I've played around with so many headsets over the years, and most of them are pretty solid. Like I said, there are some that are just complete junk, so just be careful. But do your research, check reviews. That's the best way if you want to get into the headset world.
Interesting. Just very curious. So, cool. I don't have anything to contribute to that.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody, for downloading the show. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for us, and leave a review on iTunes or whatever your podcast platform is of choice. Any and all feedback is welcome. Come on by the Discord room. Say hi. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you and see you hang out with us. And God damn it, I will get everything together for the game night. I promise. I've just had, like, the past couple weeks, it's just been hell. So those of you that are expecting a game night, I promise you I haven't forgotten. Joe, I'm looking at you because you were the one that said we weren't going to do it because communities never do it, and I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to do one.
Joe's face I'm just imagining him like Jim from The Office right now, just that surprised face. He's just like right when you said like, Joe, I'm looking at you, I could guarantee he was just like, what? Why are you looking at me?
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at WDGR Podcast. That's at WDGR Podcast. Will, how can they find you?
Will_gear.
Follow me at Science Storm. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.